All right, let's get right into it. Sometimes in geopolitics, the biggest story isn't the one everyone's watching. You see a huge summit between two superpowers. You think you know what it's all about. But the real shockwaves, well, they often land thousands of miles away, in a place you would never ever expect. And that's the big question for us today, isn't it? The entire world had its cameras pointed at a meeting between the US and Russia, a meeting focused squarely on the war in Ukraine. So how on earth did India, a country half a world away, suddenly find itself in the economic hot seat? Let's unpack it. So first, let's set the scene. Picture this, Alaska. We've got two of the world's most powerful leaders sitting down for a conversation that could, quite literally, change the course of a war. The stakes couldn't be higher. The stated goal was pretty clear-cut: find some kind of path toward ending the devastating war in Ukraine. Now, this wasn't just any meeting. This was the two largest nuclear powers on the planet trying to de-escalate a massive conflict in Europe. The implications for global security were, well, they were enormous. So what was the actual vibe in the room? Did they get anywhere? Well, the public statements afterwards painted a very, very specific picture. Right out of the gate, President Trump was incredibly upbeat, even calling the talks extremely productive. This immediately set a really positive tone, making it seem like a breakthrough might just be on the horizon, even if all the details were still behind closed doors. And here's where it gets really interesting. President Putin actually seemed to agree with President Trump's view, suggesting that the war might never have happened under his administration. It was this really rare moment of alignment that showed, a potential willingness from both sides to find some common ground. Okay, so if we boil it all down, the summit wrapped up with a lot of positive language, but no concrete signed on the dotted line deal. There was talk of progress, maybe a follow-up meeting that would include Ukraine, and this general sense of wanting to fix the strained U.S. Russia relationship. But the real story? That was brewing just beneath the surface. Because, you see, while all the headlines were focused on handshakes and hopeful sound bites about Ukraine, the summit's most immediate and powerful impact was being felt somewhere else entirely. This whole situation is just a textbook example of something called great power bargaining. It's this idea that when the giants of the world, think the U.S. and Russia, start making deals, other countries can get caught in the fallout, almost like they become bargaining chips in a much, much larger game. Which brings us right back to our central mystery. With everyone's attention on Kiev and Moscow, which nation was suddenly staring down a massive strategic and economic crisis, all because of a meeting in Alaska? And the answer, incredibly, is India. This one summit basically put them on one of the most difficult geopolitical tightropes any country has had to walk in a long, long time. To really get why, we have to look at energy. Since 2022, India has become a huge buyer of discounted Russian crude oil. It now makes up a staggering 35 to 40% of its total oil imports. This has been absolutely crucial for India's economy. But, as you can imagine, it's also drawn some serious heat from the West. And here comes the hammer. As part of a pressure campaign on Russia, the U.S. began to float the idea of a potential 25% tariff on all Indian exports. Just like that, India's energy relationship with Russia was directly threatening its trade relationship with the United States. This wasn't just a warning shot. It was a multi-billion-dollar problem. And it could get so much worse. The U.S. Treasury warned of even tougher sanctions, with talk of a proposed bill that could authorize tariffs of up to 500%. The message couldn't have been clearer. Keep buying Russian oil, and it could come at an absolutely catastrophic economic cost. So India is caught between a rock and a hard place. It desperately needs that cheap Russian oil to fuel its growing economy and keep prices stable at home. But at the same time, its economic future depends on selling its goods to its biggest trading partners, like the U.S., without getting hit by these crippling tariffs. It's a choice between two essential things, with no easy answer in sight. So, what's the play here? How does a rising power like India even begin to navigate a world where its biggest partners are pulling it in completely opposite directions? Well, India's strategy seems to have three key parts. First, they have to walk that incredibly fine diplomatic tightrope, trying to keep their partnership with the U.S. strong while not abandoning their long-standing energy and defense ties with Russia. Second, they need to double down on partnerships with the U.S. and Europe in other areas, like tech and trade. And third, there's a bit of hope. banking on the idea that any progress in the Ukraine peace talks will convince the U.S. to delay or just scrap the tariffs altogether. Now, if we zoom out, this whole episode is a really big deal for global politics. It shows just how incredibly challenging it is for countries like India to maintain what they call strategic autonomy when the giants are making moves. It's a reminder that, at the end of the day, great power politics still plays a huge role in how conflicts get resolved. And it proves that a single meeting can start to redraw the security map of Europe and, really, the entire world. And that really leaves us with the big question for the future, doesn't it? In a world that's being defined more and more by competition between superpowers, are other nations truly able to chart their own course? Or are they just destined to be caught in the crossfire, navigating the chaos created by others? It's a question that India and a lot of other countries are wrestling with right now.